turned 80 last winter. Not with fireworks, not with family crowding the house. Just me, the smell of peppermint tea, and the quiet creaking of the wind outside my window. And strangely, it felt just right. You see, by now, I've outlived most of the noise in my life. The deadlines, the chasing, the pleasing. I've also outlived some of my illusions. Though not all. Some of them, I didn't even know were illusions until they nearly drained the spirit out of me. But if I had to name the most dangerous illusions, the ones that sneak in when you're about 50, they wouldn't look like monsters. They'd look like comfort, like success, like love, like purpose. But they rot you quietly, from the soul outward. And no one warns you because at 50, people still think you've got it all figured out. I didn't. At 50, I was still trying to win rooms I didn't even want to walk into. Still smiling in meetings I hated. Still replying to texts out of obligation. Still mistaking being needed for being loved. One of the first illusions that wrapped itself around me was that I needed to stay relevant. That word, relevant, it's a trap dressed as ambition. I remember upgrading my phone every year like it would keep me young. Reading articles I didn't care about, joining committees, picking up phrases younger folks used, laughing at jokes I didn't understand, because heaven forbid someone thought I was slipping. But in that scramble to stay relevant, I abandoned something irreplaceable. My stillness. I stopped sitting in silence with myself. I stopped walking without headphones. I even stopped daydreaming. There's a kind of erosion that happens when you constantly chase the newest thing. You don't notice it at first. You think you're staying fresh. But really, you're slowly sanding off the parts of you that were never meant to change. Then came the illusion of significance through busyness. At 50, I was addicted to being needed. I'd answer emails at midnight like the world would fall apart without me. I thought rest was for the weak, and boundaries were just excuses for people who couldn't handle pressure. Looking back, I wasn't strong. I was scared. Scared of stopping long enough to hear what my soul actually needed. Scared that if I wasn't producing, fixing, helping, I'd become invisible. But here's the truth. When your spirit is tired, more doing won't save it. It'll bury it. And I buried mine deep beneath calendars, conference calls, community work, and a smile I wore so long I forgot it wasn't mine. You want to know when I noticed? When I started talking to my dog more than people. That old shepherd mix, Maggie, would just lie there next to me, breathing, existing, and she didn't expect anything from me. Didn't care if I answered emails. Didn't ask if I was still on track. She just wanted my presence. And for the first time in decades, someone did. You'd be surprised how many people at 50 mistake transaction for connection. You go to dinners, you laugh, you network, but nobody really sees you, because honestly, you're not showing up either. You're sending a polished version of yourself out there, while the real you hides in the quiet moments between obligations. It took me nearly 30 years to understand that. And along the way, I fell for the illusion that health was an entitlement. That just because I could still climb stairs or run a mile meant I was fine. I wasn't. My body was screaming, quietly, respectfully, the way it does when you're not listening. I ate stress for breakfast, skipped checkups, told myself, I'll rest next week, for 5 straight years. It wasn't until I found myself staring at the ceiling of a hospital room, chest wired and 4 dripping, that it hit me. You don't get to reschedule your wake-up calls forever. The scariest part wasn't the diagnosis. It was the realization that I had abandoned myself while chasing everything else. And let me tell you, reclaiming your spirit is a quiet war. No paravs, no applause. Just you, learning to sit with what hurts and heal it piece by piece. Some days, I still wish someone had pulled me aside at 50 and said, you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify peace. And you're allowed to matter even if you're not impressive. But no one did. So maybe that's why I'm telling you now. If you're still here, listening to an old man ramble, leave me a comment. Just a simple word to say you're walking this road too. We may not be in the same season, but maybe we felt the same rain. And maybe that's enough for today. I used to think that love at 50 was supposed to feel like certainty, like finally settling into a home you'd spent your whole life building. But the illusion no one warned me about was the illusion of emotional security. 50, you tell yourself you've seen enough of life to know who's who, what matters, and where you stand. But life doesn't always honor your resume. I remember sitting across the dinner table from someone I had spent 20 years with. She was chewing her food like she always had. I was nodding like I always did. But something had faded, slowly, like breath on glass. Almost invisible. We still shared schedules, expenses, memories. But somewhere along the line, we'd stopped sharing ourselves. The truth? You can live beside someone for decades and still go missing inside. I don't say this with bitterness. I'm long past the age for blame. But I learned something quietly cruel around that time. Just because something has lasted a long time doesn't mean it's still alive. I had confused loyalty with connection, routine with intimacy, and when I finally admitted to myself that the closeness was gone, it wasn't rage I felt. It was grief, not because of what we lost, but because I had clung to the illusion that love, once established, would tend itself. That effort belonged to the early years only. That after a certain age, the heart just coasted. I was wrong. The heart doesn't coast. It either beats fully or it slowly withers. One unsaid word, one silent meal, one withheld truth at a time. That season of my life forced me into another uncomfortable truth. At 50, many of us are still living other people's dreams. It sounds strange, doesn't it? You'd think by that age you'd know your own path. But the truth is, most of us are still trying to make our parents proud. Still trying to prove someone wrong. Still trying to outrun the feeling that we're not enough. I had built a career that looked good on paper. I had the title, the house, the tailored suits, even a reserved parking spot with my name on it. But deep inside, I was just a tired boy performing a role, afraid the curtain might drop one day and reveal I didn't really want any of it. Took me years to walk away. Not in some grand gesture, not with fanfare. Just one day I stopped setting the alarm. I made toast without checking my emails. I started drawing again. Something I hadn't done since I was 16. My lines were crooked. My hands shook. But it was mine. You'd be amazed how foreign freedom feels when you've lived most of your life chasing someone else's definition of success. And here's the thing no one tells you. It's not just about quitting jobs or leaving marriages. It's about returning to the center of yourself without the mask. And it's terrifying, because once you strip away the roles, the dad, the employee, the provider, the fixer, you're left with just the man. And if you haven't spent time getting to know that man, he might feel like a stranger. That's where many give up. They run back into roles, into distractions, into noise. But if you stay long enough in that quiet place where the real you lives, beneath the guilt, beneath the ambition, beneath the image, something sacred begins to stir. It doesn't happen fast. It doesn't post well on social media, but it's real, and it might just save your spirit. One more thing that haunted me in my 50s was this illusion that friendships should last forever. I clung to people like old sweaters, worn, familiar, but long outgrown. I'd get invited to dinners and pretend I still enjoyed the same jokes. Listened to stories I'd heard 100 times and laughed like it was the first. Not because I was kind, but because I was afraid of being without. But time has a way of teaching you that some friendships were only meant for a season. That letting go isn't betrayal, it's mercy. Mercy for them. Mercy for you. I remember one friend in particular. We had shared everything once. College days, heartbreaks, long drives with windows down and no destination. But now our conversations felt like interviews. How's work? How's the family? How's your back? Safe, polite, but soulless. One day I just stopped calling. Not in anger, not in bitterness, just in peace. Because I had come to understand something. Nostalgia is not a reason to hold on. What fed your spirit once may now weigh it down. And that's okay. If you're still here, still walking this quiet road with me, still listening to a stranger's memories as if they might hold a piece of your own, leave me a comment, just a word, a moment. Let me know you're out there. We may never meet, but sometimes, in the stillness between two hearts, recognition happens. And that is more than enough. There was another illusion I carried, quietly, like a stone in my coat pocket. The belief that I had more time to forgive, more time to start that thing I always said I'd start, more time to become the version of me I hadn't quite become yet. 50, you feel it. That odd tug between youth and age. You can still move, still dream, still build, but something in your bones whispers not forever. And yet, I postponed so much. I postponed calling my brother. I postponed writing letters I meant to send. I postponed saying, "I'm sorry." Even when the silence was louder than the wound, I thought I had time. But time isn't a polite guest. It doesn't wait for the right season. It doesn't circle back when you're ready. I missed moments, not because they weren't important, but because I assumed there'd be more of them. That's the illusion. That life will offer you endless chances to do what matters. It won't. Some doors close without slamming. Just a quiet click, and then they're gone. There was a Sunday afternoon. I remember it vividly. I was folding laundry in the guest room. It had been a quiet day, soft rain, distant thunder. The kind of day that asks nothing from you. And yet, I felt restless. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because somewhere deep in my chest, I knew I had been living a version of life where the sacred kept getting pushed aside by the urgent. I had replaced reflection with routines, meaning with motion, wonder with tasks. That's another illusion that crept in around 50. The belief that being productive is the same as being alive. I had days filled to the brim, meetings, errands, achievements, but I went to bed feeling hollow, like I'd eaten a meal with no flavor, full but unfed. I had forgotten how to sit still, how to look at trees without calculating their age or value, how to read a book without feeling guilty for not multitasking, how to simply be without justifying it to anyone, not even myself. It took losing my sense of wonder to realize how precious it had been. I started walking without a destination, sitting on benches I used to pass by, watching people not to judge or categorize but just to notice them. An old woman sipping tea alone, a young father fixing his child's shoelace, a couple arguing softly but still holding hands. All of it beautiful in its ordinary way. And I began to notice something else, too. I had stopped feeling things all the way through. Pain? I numbed it with work. Joy? I rushed past it onto the next task. Grief? I postponed it until it became a lump in my throat that no doctor could explain. There was a day, I don't remember the date, only the light. The window was open. A breeze came in, gentle, like a whisper that knew my name. And I cried. Not for a specific reason. Not for a headline or a memory. Just because I hadn't cried in years. And my soul needed to. It was as if my spirit had grown tired of pretending it didn't need softness. That it didn't ache. That it didn't remember. That moment broke something. And healed something too. You see, when you reach 50, the world still expects you to be composed. To be the strong one. The reliable one. The fixer. But sometimes what you need most is to fall apart gently, in a safe room, with no one watching, and let the pieces come back together in new, truer shapes. I began to talk to myself differently after that. Not like a coach barking instructions, more like a friend sitting on the porch beside me. I asked questions like, what are you afraid of losing? Who are you still trying to impress? What would your life look like if you weren't so afraid? And slowly the answers came, not in words, but in peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need to be explained. The kind that comes when you finally stop running from yourself. That's what I wish more people knew about turning 50. It's not a checkpoint. It's an invitation, not to do more, but to undo, to unlearn the lies, to unravel the mask, to remember what joy feels like when it's not attached to outcomes or applause. And I'll tell you something quietly so only those who've been there will hear it. The hardest illusion to shed is the one that tells you your worth is based on what you offer others. But when you let go of that, when you truly, fully believe that you are enough, even when you're not fixing, earning, or entertaining, something miraculous happens. You begin to rest, not just in your body, but in your being. And that rest, it restores parts of you that achievement never touched. One afternoon, Not long after my 57th birthday, I caught myself doing something I had done 100 times before without thinking. I looked in the mirror, not to check if I had toothpaste on my chin, but to evaluate myself. You know what I mean? That long stare, the one that doesn't see your face so much as it scans for proof. Proof that you're still desirable, still strong, still in control. And I realized, in that moment, how much of my life had been spent performing for the reflection. It wasn't vanity. It was the illusion that I had to look the part of the man I thought people expected me to be. We rarely speak of this, how much pressure men carry quietly. To seem unshaken, to stay in command, to keep earning, achieving, providing, no matter what's unraveling inside. By 50, you're supposed to have all the answers. But what if the truest wisdom comes from finally admitting what you don't know? What if the greatest strength is no longer about standing tall, but kneeling low enough to feel again? I spent years trying to be respectable, reliable, resilient. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be real. There were conversations I never had because I feared they'd make me look weak. Tears I swallowed because I thought they made me less of a man. Dreams I buried because they didn't fit the blueprint of success. And behind every one of those choices was the illusion that dignity must always wear armor. But here's what I learned, often the hard way. Armor doesn't just keep harm out. It also keeps healing from coming in. You begin to suffocate beneath your own protection, and you forget how it feels to be touched by truth. I started to peel back the layers slowly. First, it was small. I stopped pretending I enjoyed business travel. Stopped forcing laughter at jokes that didn't land. Started saying I don't know in rooms that expected certainty. And the sky didn't fall. In fact, I breathed easier. That's when I realized I had been chasing something for decades. Control. The illusion that if I just planned well enough, worked hard enough, worried long enough, I could prevent life from breaking me. But life isn't interested in your plans. It'll blindside you on a Tuesday morning with a phone call. It'll cancel your appointment with security and schedule one with surrender. One of the most humbling moments of my life came when my youngest daughter called and said, "Dad, I need you to just listen, not fix it, not talk me out of it. Just be here." And I didn't know how, because I had always shown love by doing, by advising, by solving. But that day, I learned that presence is a verb all its own. I sat in silence, just breathing with her through the pain, and something between us softened, deepened, became more sacred than any advice I could have offered. You see, at 50, you're old enough to believe you've earned the right to be heard. But maybe what we really need is to learn the art of listening again. To our children, to our bodies, to the wind, to the still voice inside that doesn't shout but never lies. There's one more illusion I want to speak of, the one that hurt me the most. The belief that your value depends on your usefulness. I retired at 62, but the feeling of being done came long before that. I'd walk into rooms and sense I was no longer the sharpest, the quickest, the most informed, and something in me shrunk. No one told me I was obsolete, but in a culture that worships speed, energy, and innovation, slowness begins to feel like failure. I spent years trying to compensate, volunteering, mentoring, staying involved. But eventually, I had to face it. I wasn't indispensable. I was human, and that's more than enough. Your soul does not expire when your job title disappears. Your worth is not stored in what you produce. It lives in your presence, in how gently you greet the morning, in how kindly you look at strangers, in the way your silence carries wisdom, not resentment. I began to find peace in being unimportant, at least by the world's standards. I sat longer in cafes, walked slower in parks, forgot my phone on purpose, and I watched life return to me, not in grand gestures, but in small, holy moments. The way my wife tucked the blanket over my feet when I nodded off. The way the sun filtered through the curtains like a quiet benediction. The way my grandson's fingers found mine without looking. And I knew then, I was never useless. I was simply learning to matter in quieter ways. There's a particular kind of silence that arrives in your 80s. It's not the absence of noise. There are still birds outside my window, still the rattle of the old heater, still the hum of life moving past the front gate. No, this silence is different. It's the kind that comes after you've stopped arguing with yourself. After you've buried the idea that you should have been more or less. After you've forgiven yourself. Not in a grand moment, but slowly, one softened breath at a time. And in that silence, I've come to hear the truth of my own life. Looking back now, I see how the most dangerous illusions weren't the loud, dramatic ones. They were the quiet ones that wore the mask of logic. The beliefs that sounded like wisdom but hollowed me from within. Like thinking I had to earn love through achievement. Like believing my emotions needed to be managed, not felt. Like assuming it was too late to change, too late to rest, too late to begin again. But none of that was true. At 50, I thought I had reached a peak. But it was really just a ledge. And the view from there was sobering. Because I could see behind me, all the years I had chased approval, accumulated things, clung to identities that no longer fit. And I could also see ahead, just enough horizon to sense how precious, how fleeting, how unspeakably tender the time remaining would be. There was a particular afternoon, it was late October. The trees in our neighborhood had shed their leaves in that quiet, dignified way trees do. I was sitting on the porch with a blanket over my knees, watching the wind pick up memories like paper. My wife was humming in the kitchen. There was no music playing, no phone buzzing, just the soft creak of the rocking chair beneath me. And it occurred to me, this is it. This is what I was rushing past year after year. This kind of moment where nothing is being accomplished, where no one is watching, where no status is being earned, just breath and presence and sky. I used to think purpose was something I had to prove. Now, I understand it's something I simply live, in how I hold space for others, in how I notice the small, in how I let go without bitterness. There are still days when the old illusions try to return, when I feel behind, when I ache for relevance, when I think maybe I didn't do enough. But I remind myself gently, you're not late, you're not less, you're not what you used to be, and that's a blessing, not a loss. You are becoming, still. And that's the quiet miracle no one told me about aging. It's not the closing of a story. It's the soft opening of a truer one. So if you're listening to this, whether you're 50 or 45 or 70, you're not alone. You're not behind. If your spirit feels tired, not because you've failed, but because you've carried too much for too long, then maybe this is your season to set it down. To return to yourself without shame. To build something slower, softer, more sacred. You don't need permission to begin again. You just need a moment of truth. And maybe this is it. If you've walked this far with me, thank you. There's no way for me to know your name. No way to see your eyes or hear your voice. But I hope, in some quiet corner of your heart, you felt seen. Not by me, but by yourself. If you'd like to return, you know where to find me. This space doesn't go anywhere. I'll be here. On the porch, in the quiet, watching the light shift through the trees, waiting to share whatever truth comes next.